Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. Night had long fallen on Konoha, with the stars twinkling brightly in a welcoming and calming manner. But the kunoichi leaping from rooftop to rooftop was anything but calm. Her face was one of barely contained rage and sorrow as she kept her eyes locked forward, her signature trench coat whipping behind her. In her arms was a small blonde child that had to be 6 years old at most, unconscious as she hurried to her destination. Mitarashi Anko was furious at what had happened. Anger welled in her bosom as she barely held back a snarl at what those idiots had done to the small boy. A sliver of satisfaction and her need to take the young boy somewhere safe temper her rage enough so that she did not kill the ignorant fools that would attack this child out of some misplaced anger and pain. She stole a glance at the boy, his face almost peaceful if it wasn't for the occasionally spasm of pain from the wounds he had received. She had done what healing she could, stopping the bleeding and healing the broken bones, but the soreness would remain for some time. Anko Onichan, a small voice whispered. Anko looked back to the boy with a small smile. Easy Gaki. Don't worry. You'll be fine. The pain in his eyes almost caused her to miss a step in her leap as he looked to her with sadness. Why? The tears welled in his eyes, tearing at her heart. Why do they hate me? Anko was torn. Her duty to the Hokage meant she was not allowed to speak of what he held. A split second later, her mind raged at the thought. To hell with that order. I swore an oath to Sensei to protect him. I will tell you all you want to know, Naruto. She promised softly, landing in front of her apartment. Once you are healed, you promise. The small voice held hope in it. Of course I promise. She smiled as she carried him inside, setting him on the bed. And I never go back on my word. Naruto nodded his little head as his eyes began to close, his breathing slowing as he drifted into sleep. Anko pulled the blanket up over him and tucked the young boy in before stepping out of the room, leaving the door cracked in case he needed her. Steeling herself, she picked up her phone and made what would be the most important she had ever made. She only had to wait moments before a sleepy voice answered, having been roused from their sleep. Hello, Kurenai. Anko. The tired voice became more alert. Why are you calling me so early? Are you okay? I'm fine. But something has happened. Anko paused in her assurances to her friend before she looked toward the cracked door. Team Uzumaki needs to rendezvous. XXXXXXXXXX. Anko opened her door 15 minutes later to see Yuhi Kurenai and Yumino Iruka waiting for her to allow them in. Quickly, the two newcomers entered and followed Anko to her kitchen, dropping into chair as she readied herself. You both remember the day we swore our oath to Sensei. Both blinked and nodded, Iruka being the one to speak with a small smirk. I remember you teasing me about my small crush on Sensei. Small my. Anko snorted as Iruka rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. You were crushing hard on her, Iruka. Don't lie to an interrogator. Kurenai grinned as she glanced to Iruka. It was really cute if I remember correctly. Oi, the male amongst them griped good naturally. If you called us together just to pick on me, I'll go home and back to sleep. But somehow I doubt that's the reason, Anko. Especially since you mentioned our oath. Anko sighed and nodded, leaning forward as she rested her elbows on the table. Her mind replayed that day as if it was yesterday. Flashback. 9-year-old Anko blew out a breath as she stared up at sky, enjoying the warm sunshine and the gentle breeze that brought the scent of spring to her nose. To her right, Kurenai was staring off towards the mountains, lost in thought while Iruka, the sole boy on their team, busied himself in a scroll he had been working on for some time now. All three were happy to be back in Konoha after the Chunin exams in Kiri. Though none were happy that they didn't progress. Anko, however, could care less. The Mist Village gave her the creeps and both the others had quickly agreed with her in private. Right now, all three genin were curious as to why their sensei had called them to meet up with her so soon after telling them they had 3 days off from duties after returning home. As if sensing their curiosity, their sensei stepped into the clearing and all three genin rose to their feet and greeted the smiling red-haired woman on her approach. Uzumaki Kushina stopped before her genin team, smiling warmly at them. "My three little genin," she greeted in a teasing tone. Prompt as usual. "Hi sensei," they chorused as she chuckled. She motioned for them to sit in the shade of a large tree and sighed before she spoke. "I know I have summoned you on short notice, but I have much to say. Firstly, I wish to express how proud I am in how you three performed during the exams." She saw the flash of sorrow and grinned. Now, none of that. You did splendidly and have gained the attention of not only the Shinobi Council but the Hokage as well. I would not be surprised if the three of you are field promoted to Chunin before the next exams come around. The three genin basked in their sensei's praise, knowing she meant every word of it. A musical laugh left the beautiful red head as she saw their looks. "No big heads now," she mock-scolded them. "You must still work very hard for such a thing to occur." "Yes, sensei. I wish this was the reason I asked the three of you to meet me, however, it is now." Her smile, if possible, seemed to grow larger as the three young ones felt their curiosity climb higher. "I called you three here due to the fact I will be moved to the reserve list for the next year due to a medical condition." Anko blinked in shock as the others looked horrified. Anko was the first to speak. "Are you okay, sensei? What's wrong? Are you hurt?" The three students tried to think of what could force their sensei to be pulled from the active roster, the list getting worse and worse if the worried looks on their faces was anything to go by. Kushina just shook her head and grinned. "I am fine, my little genin. In fact, the reason is a very happy reason. I am sure you all remember the Shinobi Code of Conduct, correct?" "Hi sensei. All 120 rules." Uruka spoke proudly, a small blush appearing as Kushina nodded happily at his answer. The other two nodded, looking at their comrade in amusement at his blatant crush he tried so hard to suppress. It was a badly hidden fact that Uruka had a major crush on his sensei, something Anko and Kurenai liked to tease him about good-naturedly. "Wonderful," Kushina complimented him, while Anko tried to hide her snicker at Uruka's reaction. She was quickly pulled from amusement as Kushina looked to her. "Anko-chan, can you tell me what the 77th rule of Shinobi conduct states?" Anko paused, her mind going over the rules. The 77th rule states that to safeguard the future of the village, no kunoichi may perform any mission above D rank or be placed in any hazardous situation once it is confirmed she is with child. They were all silent for a moment as Kushina merely smiled and gave a nod at her answer before their eyes widened massively. The two girls squealed in delight as Uruka smiled, happy for his sensei. All three gathered and hugged the now laughing woman. "I see you caught on quick. If only my husband had when I asked him the same question." The genin laughed at the imagine of the yondaime looking at his wife in confusion when asked the same question. It was most amusing to them as they settled back to their seats. They also were aware that due to Kushina being an outsider, her marriage to the yondaime was a deeply hidden secret for the time being. "I bet he is pleased, huh sensei?" Uruka asked. "He is. I had to talk him down from yelling it from the Hokage monument." She watched them, her smile never faltering. "And that is why I asked you three to some here today." Uruka frowned as he realized just what she was getting at. "We are getting broken up." Both girls looked to Uruka before looking back to their now saddened sensei. "Yes. But only for a little while. You will still be a team." "That's right." Kurenai rose to her feet, arms crossed. "No matter what, we are a team." Anko smirked and crossed her arm, nodding in agreement. "Exactly. Team Uzumaki will also be there for each other. Because an Uzumaki never breaks a promise. Iruka nodded with conviction. And Team Uzumaki will never have its bonds broken. Kushina smiled proudly at her three genin and moved quickly, pulling them into a hug. I am so proud of you three. But don't worry. I'll still be here if you need me. That's a promise. I'll let the three of you go back to enjoying your time off. Make sure you report to the Hokage Tower day after tomorrow for your new assignments. I must get moving though. I have an appointment to keep. The three genin watched her leave and Anko noticed Iruka deep in thought. What's on your mind, lover boy? Anko teased. Oh, drop it, future terrorizer. Iruka shot back, grinning. Anko put on a mock offended face. Excuse me, you mean future interrogator? Well, you do put the terror in interrogator. Kurenai rolled her eyes before stepping in. Children, peace. Now, you have something on your mind, Iruka. The boy rubbed his chin and began speaking, his face one of concentration. Sensei and the Yondaime have a lot of enemies out there. Both outside and inside the village. It's only a matter of time before someone realizes just who her child's parents are. Anko interlocked her hands behind her head, her brow contorted in thought as Kurenai nodded with a frown. Which means the baby will be in danger. Anko frowned and closed her eyes. Not to mention that if something happens to them both, the baby will be even worse off. Not many know those two are married. Well, Kurenai and Anko sent a surprised look to Iruka, a boy who never cursed. The boy crossed his arms and looked to his two friends with a worried look. What can we do to help? I don't think there is much we can do. Kurenai sounded depressed as she kicked at the dirt. It's not like we can trail Sensei and the Yondaime every day. Especially when we all become Chunin. Sensei will probably get sent on some missions we won't know about. How can we protect them? We don't. Anko answered, her face serious. We really can't do much more than put our faith in Sene's skills and the Yondaime's. Not to mention his Anbu guard. What we can do is if the worst happens, we look out for their kid. We will be the protectors for it, at least as best we can. Do you both agree? The two nodded and Anko pulled out a kunai from her pouch, holding it blade over the palm. The other two knew what she was getting at and pulled their own. Then we make an oath. On our blood, we swear to watch after Sensei's unborn child should the worst happens. We swear to protect the child no matter where the enemy comes from. On our blood, we will ensure the child grows and carries on the legacy of Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato. On our blood we swear as teamamties, friends, family. We swear on the honor of Team Uzumaki. The three genin sliced their palm with their kunai, clenching their fists and letting the blood hit the ground, swearing to honor the oath they just made. End flashback. Anko was broken from her memories as a muffled sob reached her ears. Moving quickly, Anko entered the bedroom and pulled the child into her arms, running her fingers through his hair. Iruka and Kurenai watched from the doorway. Kurenai, while finding the sight before her utterly heart-melting, also felt shame course through her. Shame in her village for treating this young child like this. Beside her, Iruka's face was mostly blank, however his eyes gave way his anger and disgust in his village. Watching Anko soothe the frightened boy only stoked his anger. The child should not have to be hated so much. His jaw tensed. We have not fulfilled our oath. He stated quietly. The two looked to him as his gaze fell onto the window, the moon hanging low. We have not done enough to fulfill it. I don't know about you two. Iruka looked to both women, steel in his voice. But I will not let this go on any longer. Well said, Iruka. Kurenai complimented before turning to Anko. What is the plan, terrorizer? Silence reigned in the small room at Anko's statement. Both looked thoughtful as she continued the soothing motions of stroking Naruto's hair, his face buried in her chest as he slept. Maybe, maybe we shouldn't tell him. Kurenai ventured. I mean, think about it. Is he really going to take the demand of three 14-year-old chunin seriously? Especially when it involves a secret we are technically not supposed to know. Not only that, but to bring it up would see us imprisoned or dead, as speaking of such a subject would break the Sandame's decree. Iruka pointed out. You're saying we shouldn't do anything. You just talked about how we weren't doing enough for the Gaki. Anko all but hissed, making Iruka raise his hands in defense. I didn't mean that. I mean, why even bother informing him? He's had plenty of time to do something about the situation. Yeah, he was there when that bitch kicked Naruto out into the cold. And if I rightly remember, you had the honor to deal with her in T&I. Anko felt embarrassed at her outburst toward the man. He was also quite correct in that Ibiki had let her handle the interrogation of the horrid woman. They managed to get enough evidence to have her sentenced to hard labor for 10 years in the mines. Anko had wanted to kill her, but Ibiki reminded her that the average life expectancy of a prisoner sentenced to the mines was about a year. The scarred man had a soft spot for Naruto, enjoying the occasional visit Naruto paid to Anko, as he was able to talk with the young boy and even play a game of shogi or two with the kid. Ibiki had confided in Anko that Naruto had good instincts on tactics even if the child didn't win against him. I'm sorry, Iruka. He waved it off, fully understanding her stance on the matter. Kurenai sighed and placed her hands on her hips. So, she trailed off, her two teammates looking to her. If I understand Iruka's suggestion along with Anko's plan, we are in agreement that we will instruct Naruto not only about his parents, but about his burden, correct? Hi. Oh, you know, breaking Sandame's decree is punishable by death. The bored voice cut through the room, making the three chunin freeze before they slowly turned and saw the cross-armed form of an Inu-masked Anbu with gravity-defying silver hair. All three felt their hearts stop as the Anbu gazed at them. Shit. Iruka cursed softly, angry at himself for coming unarmed. The only one of the three that was armed with any weapon would be Anko. Quickly going over the situation in his head, Iruka couldn't think of a way for any of them to walk away from this alive. The Anbu mask had specific justice on them that allowed them to not be trapped in genjutsu, so Kurenai wouldn't be able to give them any edge. And if Iruka was correct, this particular Anbu was on a level far above their own. Hitaki Kakashi was well on the way to becoming a legend. The Anbu turned his attention from the sweating chunin to Anko and Naruto. Anko shifted to place herself more protectively over the small boy, ready should the Anbu try anything. No one expected the Anbu to wave his hand dismissively. Don't be so hasty, you three. He pointed to Naruto. How is he? I also wished to pass word from Ibiki-san that he thanks you for leaving two of the attackers alive. 2. Anko was caught off guard as the Anbu leaned against the wall casually. All 6 were alive when I left. Yes. But 4 decided to break the decree. The others were wise enough to keep their mouths shut. Unlike a certain 3 chunin. The tension in the room became thick as the 3 felt they were only still breathing at the Anbu's leisure. None could have expected the next words out of his mouth. Which is why you should be more careful, yes. The Anbu pulled his mask up and looked at all 3 with that damned eye smile that always annoyed Anko. But right now, they figured they could breathe a little easier. What's your game, Kakashi? Game? Yumino-san. Kakashi shook his head, his face becoming serious. This is no game. But first, I must ask you some questions before I decided just whether you'll walk from this apartment or not. The cold gaze swept them all. You all seem to be prepared to do anything for Uzumaki Naruto. Would you? I will do anything for him. Anko declared fiercely, glaring at the Junin. He has been treated like trash by this village for too damn long. The others nodded in agreement as Kakashi accepted her answer. You are aware that should you three fail in what you intend, it will mean the forfeit of your lives, correct? We know. Uruka spoke softly. But what kind of shinobi would we be if we fell into the trap of doing what is easy instead of what is right? You are also aware that should you go through with this, you must be constantly vigilant. Because should you do this, you will make that innocent child a target to enemies who would stop at nothing to claim their vengeance. Are you willing to do so? As Uruka said, Kurenai spoke fiercely, protectively, we won't do what is easy. Anyone wanting to harm Naruto, I'll cut their damn balls off and shove them up there, and I don't mean in a genjutsu. Anko looked at Kurenai wide-eyed while Uruka was slack-jawed. Kakashi was even taken aback by her wording. Anko smirked at her friend. I think you've been around me too long, Nai-chan. I was just thinking the same thing. Seconded. Uruka calmly stated, keeping his eyes on the Anbu. Kakashi sighed and shook his head. Then you three will need my help as well. He narrowed his visible eye at them as they allowed their surprise to show. What? You're not the only ones who swore an oath to their sensei. Or feel that this village has failed its greatest hero. Ainu-san. A small, sleepy voice called out from the bed. Anko looked down to see a sleepy Naruto sitting up and rubbing his eyes. In the split second they had looked from him, Kakashi had resecured his mask and moved so the boy could see him. Hey there, Naruto. Kakashi replied softly. I heard about what happened and wanted to thank Anko here for helping you out. Anyo. She did. Anko Onichan is the best. The tired boy smiled. Her teammates and Kakashi couldn't help but smirk at the light blush that dusted her cheeks at the adorable way Naruto spoke. Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's head and held out the toad cap the boy loved to wear to bed. I bet she is, kiddo. I wanted to drop this off to you. I know you like Gama-san to watch over you while you sleep. Naruto nodded and pulled the sleeping cap on, yawning and laying back down, cuddling into Anko's side much to the enjoyment of everyone in the room. Anko wouldn't say it out loud, but she enjoyed how cuddly the blonde was. And warm too. Thank you, Inu-Nisan. The boy fell back asleep and the four shinobi waited for some time before speaking again, ensuring they did not wake the boy. Kakashi turned and made his way to the window before glancing back at them. I will help you. I am loyal to the village and the Hokage. He paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. But my sensei had a saying. Those who disregard the rules are trash. But those who disregard their friends and comrades are worse than trash. The village had become rife with trash as of late. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto slowly rose from his deep slumber, feeling warm and safe. Blinking a few times, the young boy yawned and stretched, noticing something moved to his right. Looking over, he saw Anko waking herself. The dark-haired woman let out a stretch and let out a sound similar to a purr before her brown eyes landed on Naruto. The young boy saw the smile on her face as she sat up. Morning, Naru-chan. How did you sleep? Great, Anko Onichan. Good. Anko rose from the bed, letting about another yawn before looking back to him. What do you say to breakfast, huh? That sounds good. The boy shyly replied, looking too damn adorable, Anko thought as she smiled. Alright. By the way, a couple of my friends came by and stayed over last night. They were worried about you when they heard what happened. Worried? About me? Naruto asked in a small voice, not believing that anyone besides Anko, Inu, and the Hokage cared about him enough to make sure he was okay. Anko squatted down and placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes warm and her smile bright. Of course they were. In fact, they've helped you out a few times but never got the chance to introduce themselves. She gave his shoulder a gentle, comforting squeeze. They're good people and I'm sure they will want to be your friend, just like me. His eyes grew wide at what Anko said. Friends? You? You want to be my friend? Of course, Naru-chan. Anko answered, pulling him into a hug, pushing down her anger at the village once more as the young boy shook from emotion. I want to always be your friend. Thank you. Naruto chalked out before pulling back and grinning mischievously at her. Does that mean I should call you Anko-chan now? Anko smirked and ruffled his hair before standing back up. You know what, Gaki? I kinda like you calling me Anko-chan. It is pretty adorable. Come on then. Let's go introduce you to my friends. Naruto smiled and followed behind her, still unsure about meeting new people. What if they hated him? What if they told Anko they wouldn't be her friend anymore if he was around? He was so lost in thought he almost walked into Anko as she had stopped outside the door and was shaking with her hand over her mouth. She quickly motioned for him to be quiet and quickly went back into her bedroom. Kurenai was woken by a bright flash and giggles. Opening her eyes, she sent a sleepy glare at her best friend whose face was red from holding in her laughter. What's so funny? A gasp above her caused her to look and her own face went red as a tomato. Giving a startled yelp, Kurenai leapt to her feet as Iruka started sputtering some kind of apology. She had been using his lap as a pillow. Anko lost it and laughed harder as the little blonde boy beside her began giggling. She knew the child didn't understand why Anko was laughing. He probably thought her jumping to her feet with a red face was funny. Kurenai spotted the camera in Anko's hands and her glare heated as much as her face did. Placing one fist on her hips, she extended her other hand out in a give it motion. Give me that camera, Anko, or I'll try out a new genjutsu I learned recently on you. Anko froze. She was well aware of the Hell's View genjutsu, and while Kurenai wouldn't use it to its full effect by far, she was good enough that even Anko had trouble breaking them. Grumbling, Anko handed the camera over to Kurenai, who scrolled back to the picture she took and erased it from the digital camera. What no one but Naruto noticed was the small little square Anko secreted away into her pocket. Anko would let Kurenai win this round and thanked Kami those cameras allowed 2 memory cards. Well, sorry I woke you from your comfortable pillow, Nai-chan. Anko snickered. But I figured you two would like to meet Naruto. The boy moved behind Anko, shyly peeking out as Iruka stepped over and squatted down to be eye level with Naruto, but at a safe enough distance not to scare him. He gave a smile to the boy that was returned hesitantly. Well, hello there. Iruka greeted cheerily. It's nice to finally introduce myself. I'm Yumino Iruka. It's good to meet you, Yumino-san. Naruto replied. I remember you helping me buy food last month. Iruka grinned and rubbed the back of your head. Ah, don't mention. And you don't have to call me Yumino-san. You can call me Iruka if I can call you Naruto. Anyo. Alright then. Iruka Nisan. Well, aren't you just a polite and adorable little boy? I'm Yuhi Kurenai. Pleased to meet you, Uzumaki Naruto. Kurenai gave a small bow before squatting down herself. You have very pretty eyes, Kurenai Onichan. Naruto exclaimed, seeing her red eyes. She blushed lightly and smiled as Naruto narrowed his eyes in concentration before they widened. Oh, I remember you. You took care of that one man that told me I had to, service him. Anko and Iruka's anger flared, barely contained as Naruto seemed not fully sure if he was remembering correctly. A small, almost unnoticeable nod let the other two know he had remembered correctly. She kept her smile as she spoke to Naruto, knowing she would be explaining what happened to the disgusting bastard. That's right, Naruto-kun. But don't worry. I had a talk with him about what he said. Has anyone else said anything like that? Naruto missed the predatory look on her face as he thought hard before shaking his head. I don't think so, Nichan. They mostly call me names or throw stuff at me. Anko-chan said she'd tell me why soon as I felt better. I feel better now, Anko-chan. Can you tell me please? Anko felt her heart melt at the pleading look he gave her and sighed. Alright Naru-chan. I think breakfast might have to wait because we have a lot to talk about. To start with Naruto, we want to tell you about our sensei. Her name was Uzumaki Kushina, and she was your mother. Naruto's blue eyes widened as he took in what she said. You knew my Ka-san. His voice came as a whisper, his heart leaping in joy that he was finally learning where he came from. Anko nodded, a sad smile on her face. What was she like? Your mother was a most beautiful and skilled kunoichi. Iruka spoke fondly. She truly was one of the best in the village. If it had not been for her being a foreigner, I'm sure she would have been the Hokage. Whoa, she was really that strong. Naruto's face showed awe in hearing this, his young mind running wild at hearing that his mother could have had the old man's job. Kurenai smiled at the blonde. She was indeed. In fact, I don't think it's a stretch to say she could probably rival the Yondaime in terms of sheer ability. She was amazing with seals. What did you mean by a foreigner? Iruka rubbed his chin as Anko gave Naruto a gentle squeeze. Out of all of them, the academy instructor in training would be the best to handle this part. Well, you see Naruto. Your mom came the village from Uzushiogakure when she wasn't too much older than you. The Uzumaki clan had close ties to our village since its founding. In fact, Uzumaki Mito, a legendary seal mistress herself, was married to the Shodai Hokage. A lot of the protections we have today were designed by her. The three watched the boy as he hung onto Iruka's every word, hungry for more information on his family. The reason your mother came to our village was because of a great honor and duty that only an Uzumaki could do. And she had been chosen as the best in her village to fulfill that duty. What duty was that? We'll get to that Naruto-chan. Anko smiled gently. But we can't just jump around the story, you know. Besides, we haven't really even touched on who your father was yet either. Gotta know both parts for it to make sense. Naruto nodded in understanding. We don't know much of what her life was like at first. Mostly as Kushina-sensei wasn't too big on talking about her past. But what we can tell you is how she was when we were assigned as her genin team. Iruka paused before continuing. Kushina-sensei was a kind woman who always put her precious people before herself. She hated bullies and Kami help you if you ever made the mistake of calling her tomato. Why, your mother had a bit of a temper. Kurenai grinned. When she would get mad, her face would turn as red as her hair. But eventually her nickname went from tomato to the red-hot-blooded habanero. And boy did she earn that name. The three Chunin snickered as a memory of their second C-rank mission surfaced. Some idiot Iowa Junin had made this mistake of mocking her, calling her the red-hot tomato. He didn't walk for long after that. Iruka took a breath before he continued. All in all though, your mother was the best sensei anyone could have had. She trained us right up until she found out she was pregnant with you. If I remember, you three were the first Kushina-sama spoke to after finding out. Heads turned to the window to see Inu lazily waving at them. Naruto hopped from his spot and threw himself toward the Anbu, latching on at his waist in a hug. Inu Nisan. Hey o Tudo. Kakashi greeted the boy with a hug. Your friends here told me they wanted to tell you some important stuff today. Since they knew your mother very well, I figured I'd tell you about your father. He was my sensei after all. That actually works. Anko commented thoughtfully. You were pretty close with him and I'm sure you'd be able to fill in some blanks for us. Kakashi nodded before digging something from his pack. He pulled out what looked like a well-worn photo album and tossed it to Anko. I don't know if you have any pictures to show of Kushina-sama and sensei. That was something entrusted to me after it happened. I feel Naruto should have it. It's only right their son gets the family album. The three Chunin looked at Kakashi and felt their respect in him climb even higher as Anko slowly opened the album. The first picture was of a grinning Kushina, the Konoha headband proudly on her forehead. Beside her was a much younger Sandaime and who they could only guess was a friend of hers. It was obviously a graduation photo. Naruto's eyes did not leave the picture as he took in the details. Anko slowly turned the pages, the others gathering around to see too. The violet-haired woman snorted in laughter at seeing their old team photo, at least, not the official one. In it, Kushina tried to look stern while Anko had her tongue out, pulling down at her eye. Kurenai had struck some kind of model pose and Iruka had attempted to look like some kind of old sage. Oh Kami, I remember when we took this. Anko laughed. Iruka grinned. Yeah, Sandaime thought we had planned it. Joke was on him though. Kurenai smirked. It was Kushina-sensei's idea to begin with. Shaking his head, Kakashi listened as they pointed out certain people in the photos and roughly when others had been taken. Naruto smiled as he saw a picture of his mother with a blonde-haired man in a Junin vest, both smiling at each other and he could feel the happiness coming off the photo. Ka-chan was very pretty. He edged his head to the side. I don't know why she hated having red hair though. It's special and pretty. Your father thought so too Naruto. Kakashi spoke up. Seeing Anko nod, the Anbu picked up on the storytelling himself. In fact, it actually saved your mother when she was kidnapped. You see, your mom and dad didn't fall in love at their first meeting. In fact, Kushina-sama confided in me once that she had thought your father was a wimp when they were in the academy. He tended to steer clear of her. She thought it was because he was weak and disliked her for being a foreign-born kunoichi. And it couldn't be further from the truth. The three Chunin had to chuckle at what Kakashi said. They knew very well that it was probable she had said just that. Naruto turned his attention back to the Anbu as Kakashi continued. Not long after she made genin, Kumo Shinobi had abducted her because of her special chakra she had. It's the reason she was selected for the very important mission Iruka had mentioned. If I remember what Sensei said, she had pulled strands of her hair loose and dropped them as the Kumo nins lead her towards the border. Her hope was that the Anbu and tracking teams would catch it and follow the trail. He paused and smiled. They missed the trail but your father didn't. In fact he collected and followed the trail all the way to the kidnappers and defeated them to save you mother. He actually carried her all the way back to the village. He told her he admired her and liked her red hair. After that day though, well they grew closer and eventually got married. Wow, Otu-san was strong. He rescued Ka-chan like a hero saving the princess. Kakashi inclined his head before continuing. Some of us did make the comparison. Naruto, your father was a great man. He did everything in his power to protect his friends and comrades. He was also a bit of a joker at times. I owe him a lot however as he was there for me after I lost my father. His name was Namikaze Minato. Anko frowned slightly as it felt that Kakashi was skimping on the details but did remind herself that Naruto was 6 and any more exposition dumping would probably overwhelm the poor boy. Glancing at him, she saw him rubbing his chin in thought. That name sounds very familiar to me. Naruto mumbled and Anko decided to take back the reins of the conversation. It should Naruto-kun. He was the hero of the village. The Yondaime Hokage. Stunned, Naruto looked to her, searching for any sign she was playing a joke on him. But seeing not only her face open and honest along with all minus Inu's face showing the same, he didn't know what to say. What could you say to that? Except he had 2 very important questions still left in him before he allowed everything to overwhelm him. Did they love me? Of course Naruto. You were all your mother talked about. And she had to threaten your father when he tried to sing his praises from the Hokage monument. They did truly love you and looked forward to raising you. Anko assured him. Oh. He paused before a watery smile graced his face. I happy you told me all this. But, what happened to them? Anko sighed and pulled him close again, speaking gently to the 6-year-old. Naruto, let me ask you something first, alright? If I take a cup and fill it with water, does the cup turn into water? What? The confused child asked. Of course not. The cup is just holding the water. Just because you put water in a cup doesn't mean it turns into water. Then please remember that, no matter what you hear, no matter how it seems, you are Uzumaki Naruto. My friend. Anko told him in a stern tone before her face softened. Naruto, you remember the duty we spoke of. The one your mother came here to carry out. Uzumaki Mito wasn't special just because of her abilities or who she married. She was special because her chakra made her able to hold the Kyuubi no Kitsune in her without any harmful effects. The demon that attacked the village. Hi. Anko ran her fingers through his hair to calm him as best she could. When Mito-sama neared the end of her life, she had to transfer the burden to another to keep the village safe. Your mother carried that burden until the day you were born. It got out. Naruto realized, his mind connecting the dots. Hi. And we don't know why or how. What we do know is that not long after the Kyuubi was freed, your father resealed the Kyuubi into a new container. She paused and locked eyes with his frightened ones. He sealed the Kyuubi into the only person he could trust to carry such a burden and succeed. He chose you, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto trembled before tears fell down his face. Then I am a monster. Anko cupped his cheek and turned his face so she could look him in the eye. You are not a monster, Uzumaki Naruto. She told him seriously. Remember what I said about the cup? That's you. Kyuubi is the water. Piss water mind you, but water nonetheless. Anko. Kurenai scolded in a half-hearted attempt for her language. Anko ignored her as she continued speaking to Naruto. You are a hero, Naruto. A hero. You protect us every day from a terrible demon. Those villagers should be kissing the ground you walk on for saving their sorry skins, not treating you like dog shit under their foot. Anko. Iruka's nervous voice called, but she ignored it, her whole focus on the shocked boy in front of her. Don't ever call yourself a monster, Naruto. She leveled a soft look at him. I've met a real monster. I was trained by one after your mother had to go on the reserve list. Anko. She paused at Kakashi's shout, noticing an undercurrent of fear in his voice. At once, a very familiar and very powerful presence was felt behind her, her face paled and her body froze. She could see Kurenai and Iruka's panicked faces and Kakashi's stiffness as they looked over her at something. She knew just who it was even without Naruto's happy cry of, Hokage Gigi. Well, 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 what do we have here? 5 troublemakers it appears. A grandfatherly voice sounded through the silent room. XXXXXXXXX. 15 minutes earlier. The Sandame sighed and turned the crystal ball off, having watched enough. He had a suspicion what was going to happen, it had been only a matter of time after all. Rising from his chair, he grabbed his Haori and exited the tower, making the excuse of getting some fresh air and made his way towards Anko's apartment. I may not agree with what those 4 have done, but maybe it's for the best. He thought, walking slowly through the village. The behavior of the villagers had been disappointing the last several years. They praise Minato-kun yet piss upon his last request. And I have only caused more harm than good. Minato-kun. Kushina-chan. I have made a grave mistake in trying to protect your son from your enemies. I did not see the enemies in these very walls. Though I am curious how Anko knows so much of the Kyuubi's history with our village. While he did not think it wise to inform the boy of his heritage and the burden he carried yet, he wondered if he was too protective of Naruto. After all, seeing what his attempt to protect him has caused, the Sandaime decided that maybe the rule breakers he was heading to were correct. He entered the apartment silently, noticed by Iruka, Kurenai, and Kakashi while Anko was telling Naruto he was a hero, not a monster. XXXXXXXXX. Present. Hiruzen kept his expression calm as he swept his eyes over his shinobi, secretly enjoying the fact he caught them off guard. If the old man was honest with himself, he had a dark sense of humor and liked to occasionally remind the youngsters he was still the strongest. His face warmed as Naruto hurried over and hugged the old Hokage. Naruto-kun, I am pleased to see you are okay after what happened last night. I had received a few conflicting reports, but I am pleased to see you have made a few friends. The four shinobi didn't dare move. Sandaime may look like a kindly old man in front of Naruto, but that didn't mean they weren't all dead. They just didn't know that the Sandaime was currently messing with them just for fun. And maybe a little bit of irritation that the four had not thought to speak with him before telling Naruto all of this. The child smiled and nodded. I sure did, Gigi. They are really nice to me. Well, that's wonderful, Naruto-kun. Always remember that friends are indeed precious. Sandaime smiled and ruffled his hair. I also came by as I had a vision this morning that you'd be told a very big secret that many do not know. And one that you must not share with anyone just yet. All four felt their hearts drop. They had forgotten about the crystal ball. Of course the Hokage would look in on Naruto from time to time. The Hokage ignored them for the moment and lowered himself to be as close to eye level as he could with Naruto. I also wish to say that Anko-chan here is correct. You are a hero, Naruto. And I know both of your parents would be very proud of you. Everyone in the room were shocked as the Sandaime rose back up and gave Naruto a deep respectful bow. As the head of the Sarutobi clan, and as the Hokage, I truly thank you, Uzumaki Naruto, for protecting us. You are a friend to me and my kin. Naruto blinked owlishly before turning and seeing the four other shinobi bow and thank him just as respectfully and heartfelt as the Hokage. This was too much for the young boy, who promptly fainted. With speed belying his age, Sandaime caught the young boy before he hit the floor and gently placed him on the couch. Making sure he was comfortable, Sarutobi turned his calm gaze upon his shinobi. You know, by law, I could kill each of you. He causally spoke, letting them sweat it out before he delivered the killing blow. Instead, I'm charging the four of you with the responsibility to watch over and prepare him for what his life will become. A breeze could have knocked them over as Sandaime chuckled, turning his gaze back to Naruto. I don't agree with telling him so young, but the damage is done. Naruto has already told me on many occasions, he wants to become the Hokage someday. For that, he will need help. The old man leaned back and sighed. I cannot be everywhere and I am getting far too old to take on another pupil. Hi, Hokage-sama. The four responded, still not daring to believe they weren't going to die. It had been a quiet few days since Anko and the others had decided it was time for Naruto to learn about himself and his burden. The young boy had been exceedingly grateful to all of them, though he had asked a few questions they should have been prepared for. 3 days prior. Anyo, you're welcome, Naruto awkwardly stated, not sure how to handle having all 5 of the shinobi thanking him after he woke from his fainting. I do have a question though. What is it, Gaki? Anko asked. We'll answer best we can. Why did you all wait so long? Kakashi and the Sandaime sadly looked at their feet, shame burning in them at his question. Kurenai felt guilt as well as Iruka. Out of the 5 of them, Anko really was the only person who could say they had done everything in their power. Surprisingly, it was the Sandaime who spoke first. I honestly felt you were too young to know such details, Naruto-kun. I had hoped you would find your own way in life, friends to be there for you just as much as you would be there for them. I had hoped the village would look past its pain and see you for the hero you are. While my intentions were good, my inaction did nothing to help. The Hokage can command the people, but he cannot command their hearts. I see now that the villagers and some of my shinobi obeyed with their mouths but betrayed me with their thoughts. Huh. Naruto blinked in confusion at what the Hokage had said. What he means, Naruto, Iruka interjected, albeit hesitantly, is that he wanted you to grow up as a normal child before you had to carry this secret. Unfortunately, while all of us agreed with the Sandame's decree that it should be secret and to treat you as we would any other child, most only gave a hollow promise and ignored the Hokage's efforts. Oh. Naruto rubbed his chin, his eyes squinting in thought before he smiled at the Sandame. Well, it's okay now, Gigi. I am making friends. And one day, I'll prove to those villagers that I'm just Naruto. Not an evil old baka fox. The adults chuckled at Naruto's declaration as the young boy hugged the Sadaime before his eyes turned to the others, the question in his eyes. Hitaki Kakashi sighed and hung his head. If anyone failed you and your parents, it's me. Looking up, he sighed and continued. I couldn't get past my pain of losing your Otusan, Naruto. It was one too many loved ones I lost. I buried myself in my work, trying to ignore the pain and emptiness I felt in my heart. I lost not only my sensei and his wife, someone I respected, but also my teammates. I felt that every time I got close to someone, they died. He near whispered the last part, honesty plain to all. He knew it was not a good reason, not even a passable reason, but it was honest. He was surprised when he felt a pair of arms try to wrap around his waist and opened his eyes to see the cerulean ones of his sensei's son. I understand, Inu Nichan. Naruto spoke with a forgiving smile. You were hurt. It takes some time to get better after getting hurt. Thank you, Naruto Otudo. Kakashi choked out, touched by the boy's more mature outlook than Kakashi's own. Iruka sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. I can't speak for the others, but I trusted in the Sandame's decree to work out in the way he wanted. He admitted, wincing at his own admission. I didn't think the village would place all its anger on you. And while I did help when I could, I didn't know if it was a good time to go against the decree. But with every year passing and the villagers doing more and more to harm you, it made me angry every single time. I'm not sure why I didn't do more. I guess I was a coward. Naruto nodded, not sure what to say but gave the man a hug as well. After all, even if he hadn't told Naruto anything, he was still one of the few people Naruto could remember being kind to him and helping him. For that alone, he had the 6-year-old's forgiveness. I really don't have a reason, Naruto, besides the same as Iruka has said. Bullcrap, Nai-chan. Anko glared at her. You've been on constant long-term missions as a genjutsu mistress. And from what I remember seeing, you helped him as much as Iruka and more than me. Naruto felt his eyes widen as he turned to face the violet-haired woman. She sighed and rubbed the back of her head as she answered. It's true, Naru-chan. Both of them have helped you more than I, even Inu and the Hokage. I have a reason for it. And please hear me out before you ask any questions. Deal. She extended her fist with the pinky extended. Naruto nodded and hooked his pinky with hers. Deal. All right. She thought on how she would say this before nodding to herself. The reason you've only seen me around the last year is because I was in rehabilitation and long-term care. It has to do with the man who trained me after your Ka-san was pulled from the active roster. At first, it was a great honor to be trained by a Sanin and a pretty big one to be trained by Orochimaru, who turned out to be the worst traitor to our village. I left with him not too long before the Kyuubi showed up. I had thought it was a training trip. It wasn't. Naruto watched her eyes seem to darken, not missing the anger and pain in her voice. He plopped next to her on the couch and leaned into her side. Anko blinked and smiled down at him in thanks, pulling him into a one-armed embrace. It was an experiment, a test of his cursed seal, not me. I don't remember anything from when I left to when Inu and his team found me in one of his labs, his curse seal on me. The rehabilitation was so I could relearn pretty much most of my shinobi training as the damn seal screwed my chakra control up along with other problems I won't get into just yet. The long-term observation was to ensure I wasn't a danger to either myself or the village. No one really knows what the seal does yet. Even the seal master Jiraiya of the Sannin doesn't know. After I was released, it took a month or two of hard work on my part to progress to the point I am now. I did make my displeasure known about the decree and planned to tell you everything within a few months. The event last night moved that timetable up. You have a seal on you? Naruto asked with interest. After all, that made her like him then. He had heard several whispers about traitorous snakes and the name Orochimaru a few times. It seemed she was also blamed for something she had no say in. Anko nodded and leaned her head to the left for him to see the strange-looking seal. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the mark, something about it felt familiar yet tainted. Without thought, Naruto placed his small hand over the mark and felt his arm become warm and tingling as Anko let out a soft gasp. The Hokage became alarmed as what appeared to be dark blue chakra was leaking from his hand over the seal and his eyes glazed over. Moving in an attempt to intervene, he was knocked back by a sudden backlash of chakra. The other shinobi found themselves in a similar condition for a moment as a bright white light filled the room that vanished almost as quickly. The room went silent as Naruto toppled over off the couch, his face showing fatigue and confusion as he looked up to the Sandaime who managed to catch him. JGG, what did I just do? Hiruzen looked to the frightened child before turning his gaze towards the unconscious Anko. His eyes widened as her head fell in just a way to expose the area of her neck. The area of neck that now had no sign of the curse seal. The others looked in awe at the child merely for the sheer amount of power they felt. The Sandaime, his senses sharper than most, felt shock bolt through him. He did not sense the seal anymore. Slowly looking to Naruto, smiling warmly as he pulled the boy into an embrace. I think you just freed Anko-chan from her terrible burden. How? Kurenai's voice was a whisper as she looked over the area herself, her red eyes locked onto where the seal used to be. How was Naruto able to do such a thing when no one else could even crack the array design? I'd say that somehow, Naruto instinctively was able to overwhelm the array. Hiruzen theorized. Though I do think we should take Anko-chan to the hospital for observation. We don't know what kind of side effects might occur. I'm sorry. Naruto sobbed. I couldn't stop my arm. I didn't mean to hurt Anko-chan. Naruto. I know you didn't. I'm sure Anko-chan will be fine. It is only a precaution. Hiruzen soothed, hoping he was indeed correct. Anko-chan won't be angry at you for this. In fact, I dare say you will find yourself shooting straight to the top of her favorite list for this. But I am concerned in how you were able to do so. Hokage-sama, Kakashi spoke from his position. It might be a combination of his Uzumaki heritage and the demon somehow. We really don't understand how the Uzumaki clan could crack almost any seal out there, and there are reports of Kushina-sama having done similar. You think this may be some form of bloodline ability? Hiruzen asked seriously. Merely speculating, though it does fit with the information we know. Kakashi shrugged. I think Inu is correct, Hokage-sama. Kushina-sensei was never tricked by any seal-based trap, and I watched her break enough of such foreign designs that it was scary. Iruka commented, his shock clear as day on his face. And if it is, then this is now a SS rank secret. No record will exist of it, nor will any of you speak of it. Hiruzen leveled his stern gaze at all of the conscious people in the room who understood just how serious this was. If I even catch a hint you have disobeyed me, I will carry out the same punishment as breaking the decree carried. Do you understand? Hi Hokage-sama. 3 voices responded. Good. I will personally inform Anko-chan herself when she wakens, though I do not think she will speak of it to anyone once she understands just who removed the seal. Now, we must get Anko-chan to the hospital. XXXXXXXXXX. Anko groaned as she came back to consciousness, blinking away the harsh light before looking at the ceiling in confusion. How did I end up in the hospital? Anko-chan. A voice cried before she felt small body land on her and arms wrapping themselves around the confused woman. Looking down, she saw a sobbing Naruto and wrapped her arms around his small body. What's with the waterworks, Gaki? I'm sorry I caused you to get hurt. He cupped, his eyes pleading with her to forgive him. I didn't mean for it to happen. For what to happen? She asked, still confused and more than a bit concerned that Naruto somehow thought he put her in the hospital. She frowned as she tried to remember what happened. She'd been telling him about her seal and bastard of a sensei. He'd asked to see it in, and her memory was blank. She only remembered a scorching heat and a massive amount of pain that was probably what knocked her out. What happened, Naru-chan? What happened, Anko? Is that when you showed Naruto-kun here your curse seal, he somehow managed to overpower and destroy the whole array? Anko snapped her head to the Hokage, her eyes wide in shock. He what? Sandame smiled and handed her a mirror so she could see for herself, speaking as she shakily accepted the mirror and placed her hand over the site of where the mark was, well used to be. She saw no signs of it on her tanned skin, realizing that her mind was clear and what felt like weight was missing. We are not completely sure at this time. The running theory is that Naruto-kun may have a blood limit involving seals. It was as if he instinctively knew just where and how to overpower the cursed seal of heaven in such a way that there was no permanent damage done to yourself or your chakra network. Anko still could not believe what she was being told as she lowered the mirror and turned her tear-filled eyes toward the nervous boy that thought he was in trouble. He squeaked in surprise as Anko pulled him into a crushing hug, his head buried in her bosom as she cried in joy. Thank you. Thank you. She sobbed as she hugged him for all she was worth. You saved me from that damned seal. She released him from her hug, Naruto's face red in embarrassment before she placed a kiss on his forehead. I know you don't know how you did it or just why I am so happy it's gone, but I owe you, Naruto-kun. I owe you a lot. You'll still be my friend. You don't think I'm a monster for what happened? She tenderly cupped his cheek and ran her thumb over his whisker marks, smiling gently at him. You're not a monster for what you did, Naruto-kun. And after what you did, Gaki, I'd love to still be your friend. Then you don't owe me. Friends help each other. She smiled brightly, nodding as she hugged him again. The Hokage watched with a small smile before he coughed to get her attention. I don't think I need to tell you that you cannot share this information with anyone. It could cause trouble. Anko's eyes hardened as she held the relieved 6-year-old close, understanding what the Hokage was hinting. Hiruzen was secretly pleased to see how protective she was over his favorite blonde. Anyone tries to hurt him dies in the most painful way possible. Good. Because your former sensei might take issue with his seal being broken. Even unintentionally by a 6-year-old with no shinobi training. Sandame paused when a thought struck him. Naruto-kun, how would you like to start training to be a shinobi? Really? You mean it? Naruto asked hopefully. The Sandaime had been against him training up until now. The old man nodded with a smile. Absolutely. After what I witnessed earlier, I think it might be best for you to start training. It will also help you to understand and improve your rather interesting ability. And I think I know of 4 shinobi that would be more than willing to mentor you. He finished with a smile. Alright. Naruto cheered happily as Anko laughed at the blonde antics. Hiruzen grinned as he rose from his seat and headed for the door. He paused and looked back at the excited blonde. You know Naruto, after seeing what you've done, I think you have the potential to become a great shinobi and a great Hokage. Present. The Hokage sighed in happiness as he completed the daily paper work before noon. He supposed it was due in part to the upcoming summer festival, and most of the efforts of the village were directed to the event itself. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair, readying his pipe with his favorite tobacco when he sensed a familiar presence nearing the office. He lit the pipe, savoring the flavor as one of his former students entered through the window, grinning at him. Hiruzen returned his grin with a warm smile. Jiraiya-kun, when did you get back? A couple hours ago. I wanted to get in some research and see how the Gaki was doing. Jiraiya remarked, dropping into the chair in front of the desk. He looks happier, though roughed up a little. Hiruzen chuckled. Yes, I have no doubt. He has started training to become a shinobi. Hiruzen smirked. It may interest you to know he hopes to one day have my job. A wide smile blossomed on Jiraiya's face. You don't say. Hey, with his heritage and if he really applies himself, I think he could do it. Minato and Kushina were known to pull off the impossible. And that trend has continued onto young Naruto. Hiruzen noted. He did after all remove Anko's curse seal. A seal you yourself couldn't crack. He what? Jiraiya's shock showed as his sensei just smirked. Yes. And that reminds me. Do you know of any bloodline limit the Uzumakis may have had? One perhaps dealing with seals? I can't say I have. Jiraiya answered slowly, still shocked at hearing what his godson had accomplished. The clan was well known for their mastery of seals. In fact, a large percentage of seal masters were Uzumaki now that I think about it. Can you tell me how he cracked it? Any side effects to the girl? Anko had no adverse side effects besides some soreness in the area. That's to be expected. But how did the Gaki do it? He doesn't know. Hiruzen responded simply. Jiraiya looked at the Hokage in disbelief. Naruto has no idea how he cracked a seal array that I've been beating my head against the last several years. Do you realize how crazy that sounds? I am aware. It does not change the fact that I witnessed it myself. In fact, it almost looked as if Naruto was overcome by pure instinct when he saw the seal. Far away look on his face when he looked at it? Jiraiya asked, serious as his mind thought back to a few occurrences when he'd watched Kushina crack an array. Hiruzen nodded and tapped his chin thoughtfully. Thinking on it, Hashirama-sama used to remark how strange it was to see Mito-sama working on extremely complex arrays with such a relaxed form. Almost as if she was possessed. Sensei, it might actually be possible. Jiraiya remarked, cupping his chin. Kushina was the exact same way. Her eyes almost appeared to glaze over as she worked with a seal. In fact, I saw her do it myself a few times when I would ask for a second and third opinion on a difficult seal I would be working on. How could it have been missed for so long though? Because the Uzumaki were indeed splendid ninja. Hiruzen grinned as his mind pieced together just how this information hadn't gotten out. Think about it. A clan of well-known seal masters produces more seal masters. If you weren't looking for any blood limit, you'd think it was merely passing on such a useful skill to their descendants, would you not? Jiraiya chuckled and leaned back. I would. In fact, that's what I thought until just now. It's the perfect cover for their secrets. And if it hadn't been for us seeing firsthand 3 different generations of Uzumaki displaying similar, if not the same behavior, you'd be none the wiser. Those smart bastards. Both men chuckled before Jiraiya decided to get back on track. So he broke her seal. And if we are correct, it might be some sort of bloodline ability. I'd also wager this is going to be a secret locked up tighter than an Iwa Nin's. Hiruzen shook his head at Jiraiya's choice of analogy. Yes, the event in Naruto-kun's role in it have been declared a need-to-know secret, only to be divulged at mine or Naruto-kun's approval once he is old enough to safely decide. The occupants were silent as Jiraiya processed what he had been told. Hiruzen watched him with interest before speaking. Perhaps it is finally time for you to introduce yourself to him. Jiraiya frowned and looked at his former sensei. You know what will happen if I go looking for him. Some will think I'm trying to honor my student and his last wish, but most will think I'm going to kill him. That would create a shitload more problems for him than what he already has to deal with. Watching from a distance won't cause him any more harm. And watching from a distance does no good for him either. Hiruzen countered, sighing. Jiraiya-kun, I understand your thoughts on the matter. But I can tell you this, he needs more people in his life that care about him. And if you wait too long, he will hate you for what he will see as abandoning him. We both know you've been handling his stipend and snuffing out rumors of his existence to those who'd harm him. And while you have helped the village with your spying, I do believe it is time for you to take a more active role in his life. You proved multiple times that your spying does not need you to be away from the village as often as you are. Your network has been long established, and if I recall correctly, your summons make excellent couriers. Jiraiya sighed and debated with himself for several minutes, Hiruzen watching him before Jiraiya sighed and nodded. All right, you have a point. Maybe I've been behaving too cautiously in regards to him. I'll go and introduce myself. An excellent idea. Hiruzen smirked. I would caution you on curbing your more interesting personality traits. Anko has taken it upon herself to begin the young boy's training and would be hostile to anything that might corrupt him. Jiraiya winced at the downright evil smirk on the Sadaim's face and made his exit. As he honed in on the familiar chakra signature, Jiraiya thought over his actions in regards to his godson. He felt he was doing the right thing, but when he thought of how Minato or Kami forbid Kushina would react to it, he felt shame in that they would not approve. They had trusted him with the care of their son, and if he was objective about it, he would say he had failed. But he had a chance to do right by Naruto. It wasn't too late for him to be in the boy's life. Jiraiya squared his shoulders and gave a sharp nod to himself. It was time he did step up and help Naruto as much as he could. His walk didn't take him too long before he came across Naruto and Anko in an empty field. It looked to him as if Anko was starting him on the basic training of a brand new academy student, which meant exercises, lectures, and laying the foundation for a well-balanced future shinobi. The young boy was sweating as he doubled over from what Jiraiya guessed was a basic 1-mile run. As he approached, he could hear Anko telling him he was doing well and that if he kept up improving like he was, he'd be a powerful shinobi. And to become a powerful shinobi, one needed to train their body and mind. He caught sight of the disbelief on Naruto's face when book reports were mentioned and decided to announce his presence in a more sedate manner than usual. Your friend is right. A truly powerful shinobi uses their mind as a tool just as much as their body or a weapon. The mind is your greatest weapon, and making it strong makes you stronger. Anko gasped in surprise at seeing Jiraiya while Naruto looked to him with a thoughtful expression. So if I'm smart, I'll be stronger. Exactly. Why do you think the old man is called the professor? Jiraiya asked with a smile. That makes sense. Thanks. Naruto rubbed the back of his head awkwardly. Um. Gomen, who are you? This Naruto is Jiraiya of the Sannin. Anko narrowed her eyes at the old man. Also known as the sensei of your father. You trained Otu-san. Naruto excitedly rushed over to him. You must be really strong. Jiraiya squatted down to be eye level and shrugged with a smile. I do alright. I just was lucky to have students who understood that a genius of hard work can achieve anything they put their minds to. I myself started just where you are when I decided to become a shinobi. So, what brings you here, Jiraiya-sama? Anko asked respectfully, though with a small glare. She knew of his reputation and that he was the author of the smut series Kakashi and the Sandaime seemed to enjoy so much. Jiraiya sighed as he rose back to his feet. I'm here because I have recently realized that my mission I set out on has long been complete. What mission was that, Jiraiya-san? Naruto asked as he looked up at the smiling man. My mission, young Naruto, was to do everything I could to protect you from the enemies of your parents, which, judging by your reaction, you've been told who they are. Seeing the boy nod, he continued. Now, it's time to start the next part of my mission. One your parents entrusted me with. One that as of recently I hadn't realized I was failing. Nani? What do you mean? I mean, Naruto, that before you were born, your mother found a name she liked in a book I wrote. One of a strong shinobi with a will that could not be broken. One that I, only came up with while eating some ramen. The old man admitted with some embarrassment. The boy seemed ecstatic at hearing this, whether from the fact it was more stories about his parents or knowing his name came from his favorite food was unknown. Anko, however, went from narrowed-eyed to glaring at the old man harshly, knowing just where this was going. This bastard. He has the balls to show up now. After abandoning Naruto for so long. How dare he? I know you understand where this is going, Mitarashi-san, and believe me, you have every right to be angry at me. I won't ask for forgiveness for my sins, only the chance to make up for it. He asked with a look of sorrow. Anko flared her nostrils before nodding sharply. All right, but it's up to the Gaki here whether he forgives you or not. As for me, I'll believe it when I see it. And if you try to corrupt this adorable little boy with your perverted ways, I'll gut you. Jiraiya couldn't read minds but could figure out what was going on in her head. Naruto sighed in contentment as he looked out over the village from his favorite perch on top of the Hokage monument. He felt the tension leave him after a long day of training and academy studies, though he had to snort in amusement. After 3 years of training, Naruto figured he could take the final exam and ace it, if it wasn't going against his trainer's wishes. He let his mind wander back to his first day at the academy and the lesson he had been given afterwards by Jiraiya. 3 years ago, the Sandaime smiled kindly as he looked over the fresh academy students, starting on the long path of the shinobi way. His eyes were seeking one particular young face and his smile faded as he looked to the instructor questioningly. It seems we are missing a student. All students are present, Hokage-sama. The Chunin instructor attempted to smile, but it faltered at the Hokage's frowning face. Oh, he questioned in a light tone. Then was I imagining escorting young Uzumaki Naruto to the academy this morning? The instructor gave a blank stare, though on the inside he knew he would not be enjoying today. Whatever response the instructor had died in his throat as a Neko-masked Anbu entered the room with a confused Naruto. The boy smiled at the Hokage before heading to his seat while the Anbu took position behind and to the left of the Hokage. Ah, Neko-san, I see you found our missing student. May I ask where he was? He was in the administration office, Hokage-sama. Neko answered calmly, though inside she was angry at what had been attempted. Naruto-san had been told to report to the office to complete some forms. I'm assuming an innocent mistake was made when he was handed the ARF-31B and told to complete a form. An oversight that will be remedied by a specialist auditing the administrative staff. The Hokage understood what Naoko was saying in reality, and the instructor seemed to as well, since his face had gone very pale. The Hokage was furious, but keeping his calm to avoid scaring the children. He knew what ARF-31B form was. During the reign of the first two Hokages, families would force their young children into the life of a shinobi despite the child not wanting to live that life. Some did such in hopes of their children gaining the skills to survive in a world of violence and death. Those were understandable. Others, however, wanted the glory and prestige should their children become famous shinobi, to gain the respect of the shinobi clans as they would have a shinobi in their family. It was enough forcing children into the service that when he had become aware of it, he reworked the academy and instituted the ARF-31B. The release form could be filled out by the child without the need to speak with the parents, moving them directly to the civilian education system and the parents being told that their child had some issue that would prevent service. The form would also be valid for 6 years. Most by the completion of the time frame would simply stay away from the shinobi forces. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes at the instructor, still maintaining his gentle tone. You do not appear to be feeling too well. Naoko, please escort the instructor to get help. And also, please alert Yumino Iruka. It appears we need a substitute instructor for today. XXXXXXXXX. Naruto found an empty spot outside during lunch and sat down gloomily. He looked around at the other kids and spotted glares directed at him, and he had even caught snippets of conversations about how parents had warned their children to stay away from him. That he was a plague on the village. He knew what they were talking about, and it saddened him as he had hoped to make friends around his age. Sighing dejectedly, he opened his lunch and was just about to take a bite when he felt two others approaching. Looking up, Naruto eyed the duo wearily as they stopped before him. The girl with twin buns smiled at him while the boy next to her looked to have two caterpillars for eyebrows. Hello. Hello. The girl chirped as she sat down across from him, the boy following suit. We saw you sitting off on your own and wanted to join you if that's alright. Oh, sure. That's fine. I'm Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. I'm Yukari Tenten. The newly identified Tenten spoke as she opened her own lunch. I am Rock Lee. Pleased to meet you, Naruto-san. The trio fell into an easy silence as they ate when Tenten broke the silence. So what was that about this morning? I guess it's just like what the old man said. An accident. Naruto replied, looking down at his ramen. Naruto-san. It is improper to refer to the sandame in such a way. Lee chided gently. Also, it is impossible to give such a form to a fresh student. Naruto sighed and looked at the two. I can't tell you. Not yet. Well, I can understand that. Tenten remarked thoughtfully. We did just meet, and hounding you about personal stuff is pretty forward. I do have a question though. Okay. Naruto uncertainly eyed the girl as she smiled widely at him. Do you wanna be friends? Lee and me don't really have any. Really? You wanna be friends with me? Of course, Naruto-san. Much like yourself, Tenten and myself are orphans. I do remember you briefly from the orphanage. Naruto racked his brains before he recalled that he had in fact seen them before. Of course, Lee-san. I apologize that I had forgotten that. Tenten waved away his apology while smiling brightly. So what do you say, Naruto-san? Orphans unite. Naruto joked, making the other two smile. He was still hesitant as he didn't know if they were serious about being his friend or if they had another motive. He would keep his guard up for now. Anko had once told him of a similar instance she had faced, and he didn't know if he wanted to chance that pain. But something told him these two had no ill will towards him. Still, it would be a while before he felt ready to tell anyone not already in the know about his secret. Present. Grinning to himself, Naruto would admit that looking back on that day put into perspective just how much his life had changed for the better. Tenten and Lee had become good friends of his. Though he could do without interacting with the stuck-up Hyuga Neji. The boy acted like he farted rainbows and the sun shone from his. A faint but familiar chakra signature appeared near him. Need something, Arrow Sennin? Naruto asked with a smirk, looking to his left. Jiraiya glared at his godson. That any way to welcome your godfather home after a 3-month absence? And how many times have I told you not to call me that? He demanded with a frown. That what you're calling your research trips now? An absence? And how many times have I said I'll stop calling you that once you stop acting like it? The blonde quipped back. Jiraiya huffed, his lips twitching into a smile as Naruto chuckled. No respect. It's good to see you're back. Anything good? Just the same. A few rumors here and there mostly. The older man answered, frowning. One of them has me curious and concerned. But nothing you need to know about yet. Anyway, what brings you up here? Just relaxing after Anko-chan's newest training idea. Naruto shuddered. I never knew how sadistic she could be. The fun ones always have a sadistic streak, my young apprentice. Jiraiya giggled. I'll bet she is really into some kinky stuff. Jiraiya gave a sudden yelp as the branch he was sitting on snapped, dropping him 10 feet onto his back. Grumbling, he looked up and noticed the smirk on his godson's face and couldn't help but let the proud grin cross his own face. You got that one figured out already, I see. Nicely done, kid. Naruto blushed and gave a genuine smile. Jiraiya didn't give out his praise very often, so Naruto knew he was speaking the truth. He rubbed the back of his head. Mostly. Still haven't gotten the hang of extending it past a meter. Naruto admitted. Jiraiya hopped up next to him and patted him on the shoulder. For your age, a meter is pretty damn good. The rest takes time and practice. By the way, what's with the neon orange suit? Naruto groaned and dropped his head. Anko's idea to help with stealth and evasion. She caught me pranking the old man and decided that instead of beating me into the dirt when I get caught, she wants me to wear this thing during the setup and the evasion from the targets along with the training she already has me doing in stealth. If I get caught, she sets her snakes on me. And if I don't get caught, she buys me a few bowls of ramen. Jiraiya rubbed his chin in thought before speaking. You know, it's not a bad idea. I mean, think about it. If you can pull off a prank on, say, the Anbu, and get away while wearing that, you'd be a deadly shinobi on infiltration, sabotage, and assassination missions once you graduate. I hadn't thought of that. Naruto muttered, his eyes falling over the village. I mean, that's a Benny, what the hell was that? Both snapped their eyes toward the village, more specifically, the Uchiha district. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes as he felt the chakra fluctuations, as did Naruto. So it's come to this. The Toad Sage thought as he rose to his feet. Naruto. Go home. Now. The boy wanted to argue, but seeing the man's face set in stone, the boy nodded and headed off in the direction of his apartment. Jiraiya glanced at the boy's retreating form before he moved. Despite his age, Jiraiya could still move quickly. Within minutes he arrived outside the Uchiha district around the same time the Hokage did. Silently, they entered the deathly silent district and saw the dead around them. What a waste. Indeed, Jiraiya-kun. The Sandaime sighed heavily, motioning for his Anbu to search out any survivors. I wish it had not come to this. You know as well as I that it was bound to happen, sensei. I just hope this doesn't come back to bite us. XXXXXXXXX. Naruto landed on a rooftop near the shady part of the village, frowning as he looked back towards the direction of the Uchiha district. They'd never really been kind to him. At best they ignored him, and at worst a few of them had thrown bricks at his head when he was younger. First time he had been hospitalized for a concussion if he remembered correctly. But something bad was going down tonight, something that had Jiraiya on edge. Sighing, he turned to head home to his apartment. Even though he stayed at Anko's most the time, he also had his own apartment. A familiar voice caught his attention, his eyes narrowing as he made his way towards the alley where it was originating from. XXXXXXXX. Why, you bastards! Anko hissed as she was dropped to the ground in a heap. What did you do to me? Shut your mouth, you. The leader of the group, a chunin by the looks of him. We're going to have some fun with you. His two other accomplices chuckled darkly as the leader rolled her onto the back, kunai in hand. Anko's eyes widened as she knew what they wanted to do, but her body wouldn't respond. The leader smirked darkly as he placed the kunai under the hem of her black shirt she wore under her long trench coat. Don't worry. Just a paralyzed seal I applied. Only thing you can move is your head for the next, 45 minutes on its current charge. You sick ass. Anko hissed. You think you'll get away with this? The leader laughed as he slowly cut her shirt up to her bra, pausing as he answered. You really think anyone cares what we do to you? The whole village despises you, snake whore. Now let's see just what kind of treat we have here. You know, I think we need to silence this one. Last one almost got us caught. Anko found her mouth covered with a thick piece of tap as the leader began pulling at her shirt with the blade. With a flick of his wrist, the kunai cut the materiel, exposing her s. Anger and fear welled up inside her as the leader roughly grabbed her left. Clenching back tears of frustration that she could do nothing to save herself. Well, hot damn, one of his stooges whistled. Look at the size of those. I know. And best part is, I'm pretty sure she's still a virgin. The leader rubbed himself against the restrained woman, licking from the swell of her to her collarbone as he lifted her skirt. He leaned over to whisper into her ear. I'm going to enjoy popping your cherry. And if you think you'll get away once the seal runs out of juice, don't get hopeful. I have enough to last the night. He rose back to his feet and exposed himself. Anko shut her eyes tightly, knowing what was coming but incapable of doing anything to stop it. Someone. Please. Help. A sudden rush of air and the weight of the bastard vanishing off her body caused Anko to snap her eyes open and look to see what happened. Standing between her and the sick bastards that had planned to rape her was a blonde-haired boy in a bright orange jumpsuit. Hope and fear shot through her at the sight. Hope that she now had a very good chance of escaping this rape attempt, but fear for her friend. Naruto had been well trained the last few years to be sure. But he was going up against 3 seasoned shinobi who would have no issue killing him. She felt the primal anger radiating off of him and had to fight down the heat in her cheeks at how raw it felt. Naruto meanwhile was glaring hotly at the three. The leader was cradling his broken jaw as one of his comrades attempted to heal it. His other friend snarled in anger and charged at Naruto. Moving quickly, he dodged the strike aimed at his head and slammed his open-palmed hand into the man's chest with enough force to send him crashing back down the alley into a trio of trash cans. Fitting landing for trash, Naruto seethed, glaring at the now mostly healed leader and his pal. You worthless pieces of shit. You demon. I'll gut you. The leader held his kunai threateningly. Then I'll make sure that little is forced to see your dismembered body as I her for hours. Rage filled Naruto. A burning anger that felt like it was consuming him. Monsters. They called him a monster for what he held, and yet men, no, insects like this walked amongst the village. Trying to center his mind, Naruto felt as if he was being pulled into darkness. Clenching his eyes shut, Naruto focused on one of the first lessons Anko taught him. Never let your rage guide your hand in battle. It will be the blade stabbed through your back. It is good advice, young warrior. But true wisdom is to know when to use your emotions and when not to. Naruto's eyes snapped open at hearing a deep booming voice. Before him, in what he assumed was a sewer, was a massive steel gate with some sort of seal over it. What made him take a step back was the massive fox staring down at him. The being smiled darkly with rows of massive sharp teeth at Naruto's reaction. It took the boy mere moments to realize just who he was looking at. Kyuubi no Kitsune. Uzumaki Naruto. We finally meet. Naruto shook his head and leveled a neutral look, keeping his fear and anger in check. I apologize for being rude here, but I have more pressing issues. He paused before looking around him. Though I'm wondering why we are in a sewer. I am aware of what you are doing on the outside. But time moves differently in here. Once we conclude this initial meeting, it will be as if no time passed in your battle. As to why a sewer? This is your mind and a reflection of it. Kyuubi explained before turning his gaze elsewhere. We have much to discuss, but that will need to wait. Right now, I am going to make you an offer to help save your precious Anko-chan. And what is that? A flash of white fangs greeted his question. I will give you some of my power. Naruto narrowed his eyes. In exchange for what? The fox chuckled before answering. I see you are indeed a sharp one. What I want at present is for you to turn those 3 cretins into smears on the sidewalk. I may be a demon as your kind call me, but one thing I cannot stand are rapists. Even I have some morals. This is a temporary arrangement until we have our discussion. Naruto frowned in thought. He knew his limits and figured he could probably handle the 3 with difficulty. Especially since the leader seemed to be closer to Junin's strength and the other 2 weren't too far from him. 1-on-1, he'd probably be alright. 3-on-1 was pushing it for him. And besides, would it really be a bad thing to work with the fox? Naruto nodded to himself. Alright, but I won't kill them unless I have to. The fox paused before giving a nod of agreement. He knew it would cause his container trouble should he take it too far. At least once he became a shinobi, the real fun could begin. Very well. Now go. Save your woman. Naruto felt himself ejected from his mind in a manner of speaking and returned to the fight he was in. Naruto felt a jolt of power run through him. Strength that would allow him to wipe Theses off the planet. He quickly suppressed those thoughts. Ego gets you killed. Naruto snapped his eyes open and saw the flash of fear on their faces before it is replaced with rage. Naruto gave a feral grin and readied himself. Use ready to dance. Anko watched from her position as the 3 Chunin rushed the boy, her muffled orders for him to leave her and get away not fazing him. In a flash, Naruto had dodged the initial kunai thrust at his heart. He grabbed the hand holding the blade and twisted sharply, ignoring the crack of breaking bones, and shoved the kunai into the shinobi. He let go as the man fell backwards, screaming with a kunai buried into his chest. You demon. I'll kill you, Kyuubi. The slowest of the 3 cried right before he began gasping for breath. Naruto's hand clamped tightly around the man's throat, squeezing. I'm a demon. That's rich coming from a rapist. He squeezed tighter as the man struggled to breathe. Say good night. Naruto slammed the man's head into the wall. Not hard enough to kill him, but hard enough to knock him out. He turned his gaze back to the leader who was standing over his now still comrade with the kunai in his chest. Surprise was what greeted Naruto as the leader dropped his kunai. You killed him. Naruto froze at what the man had said. He had just killed a man. Ignore that thought, kid. Remember the old monkey's decree. And for Kami's sake, remember what they were going to do to your woman. Naruto shook his head like a fox would shake itself to get water off and glared at the Chunin, walking toward him calmly. His life was forfeit the second he broke the Hokage's decree. So is yours and your friends. You monster. The Chunin yelled before charging at Naruto, kunai retrieved from the ground. Naruto didn't pause, and reacting on pure instinct, extended his arm and watched in amazement as some kind of chains shot from his hand and slammed into the Chunin's torso, right through his heart. Naruto watched as the life left the man's eyes and his body went limp. The chains retracted and Naruto stood completely still, eyes clenched shut. He felt a hand on his shoulder. You okay? Yeah, for now. Kakashi looked over the three dead Chunin with acceptance, having caught the last few seconds. Naruto had been right. These men would have been dead. One would be joining his comrades fairly quickly once his interrogation was done. He could guess what had happened by the view of Anko, her well-endowed chest still exposed to the world as she looked at Naruto in awe and pride. And a healthy dose of shock if Kakashi was correct. Get Anko home, Odoto. I've already sent for a clean-up crew. I'll also speak with the Hokage, so expect him to call on you in the morning. This broke Naruto from his shook. Nodding, he turned and made his way to Anko, trying very hard to keep his eyes above the neck. Shrugging his large jacket off, he wrapped her in it to cover her modesty. He gently sat Anko up and found the seal on her, pulling the tag off before removing the tap from her mouth. He saw the pride and gratefulness in her eyes and gave a reassuring smile at the unasked question. I'll be alright. I'm gonna get you home. The seal may be gone, but it will take about 10 minutes before the effects fully drop off. He easily scooped Anko into his arms, pulling her tightly to his chest to make sure she'd be secure on the trip. With a final look at the aftermath, Naruto took to the rooftops and headed to Anko's apartment. The trip took the full 10 minutes as he wanted to be sure he didn't drop the woman he considered his best friend, so she was able to stand once they got there. She had been silent the whole trip. Naruto, wait here for a minute, alright? I'm going to go change. Her voice was subdued as she looked at him with pleading eyes. Naruto nodded and started looking at the pictures, smiling as he saw a lot of them where of the two of them. All happy memories. He turned and saw her walking out of the bedroom, sweatpants and a dark orange shirt that had a familiar red swirl. She'd swept the shirt from Naruto's apartment a year ago after a massive backfire during one of the many training sessions. The shirt was really big on him but fit her perfectly. He gave a surprised cry as she pulled him with her to sit on the couch. The woman leaned her head against his side as she stretched out on the couch, her arms wrapped around his torso. Stay tonight, please. Naruto just put his arm over her in response. She hated feeling weak like she did right now, but after what just happened, she needed a friend and more importantly, needed him to stay. This was the second time he had saved her from a fate worse than death and she wouldn't admit it, but right now she felt safer with him there. XXXXXXXXXX. And that's what happened. Naruto finished. The Hokage steepled his fingers, peering at Naruto over them. It had been over 2 weeks since not only the Uchiha massacre as it was being called and the attempted rape of Mitarashi Anko. Hiruzen was also keenly aware of the issue with the only surviving Uchiha. The last loyal Uchiha he was being called. Hiruzen suspected that Uchiha Sasuke would remain loyal only so long as the village could provide him with the power to kill his brother. Yamanaka Inochi had determined that the boy had a very high probability of being a flight risk without long-term psychiatric care. The civilian council had politely declined the suggestion. Unfortunately, even though Sasuke was enrolled in the Shinobi Academy, the Sandaime has no power to force the young Uchiha to undertake the care as he was by law a civilian. Hiruzen had been thinking on a solution the last few weeks. He had already spoken to Anko and Kakashi about the event after Anko had been cleared by Inochi. He also spoke with Ibiki the day after the prisoner had been interrogated. I see. Hiruzen finally spoke. I do believe you did the right thing. But there is an issue. Oh, Hiruzen smiled. Yes. You see, you are still a civilian. You technically do not have the authority to carry out my decree. If the civilian council got involved, it would make things difficult. Naruto felt his stomach drop. What the Sandaime was saying was true. If he was a shinobi, the civilians couldn't touch him for upholding the decree. However, they could make a real case he was unstable and that he had staged the attempt on Anko despite no one believing that. It was a thin reasoning, but it would warrant a full evaluation into his mental health in the civilian centers despite protests from the Hokage and Jiraiya himself. And even though he probably wouldn't get that far, a rumor of him killing Konoha shinobi, justified or not, would only stoke the anger a good portion of the village that detested him. So I'm screwed. Not necessarily, the Hokage remarked, smirking. I understand you have been holding back in the academy, yes? Yeah, Ero Sennin and Anko-chan told me a shinobi's greatest advantage is secrecy. I asked why people try so hard to be top dog in the academy since it puts a spotlight on them. Naruto frowned. They kinda got surprised at what I said and told me to limit myself to avoid becoming an easy target. Well, I admit I never thought of it in that way. Hiruzen remarked thoughtfully before continuing. In that case, that explains why you have held a standing 3 or 4 ranks above the dead last slot. Gigi, what does this have to do with me not getting an angry mob after me? Naruto asked in confusion, wondering if maybe the old man was going senile. The Sandaime sighed. Naruto-kun, I have a long-term secret mission. I need someone I know will be close to the target once they begin missions outside of the village in a few years. He paused and saw the young boy's curiosity. I know who would be able to fulfill this mission as they understand what it means to be a shinobi. But I cannot assign him this mission. Why? They sound like they would be perfect. I'm glad you think so, Naruto-kun. I can't assign him the mission because you are not a shinobi yet. What? Naruto was bewildered. Seriously, what does this have to do with not ticking off people that want to see me dead? Naruto-kun, you have been trained these last 3 years by very strong Chunin, an Anbu captain, and my own former student Jiraiya-kun. The Sandaime explained. You are yourself near Chunin level in most of your skills. Your stealth skills are Junin level if reports are anything to go by. You also completely wiped the floor with 3 Chunin that were borderline Junin. You fought smart and efficiently. I'd say the rescue of a senior shinobi by a Chunin level academy student merits a field promotion to Genin. You can't be serious, old man. Naruto just stared at the smirking man in complete shock. You bet I am, you little Gaki. And no, I'm not going senile. He lit his pipe and took a draw before continuing. If I do promote you, it will allow me to classify the deaths as punishment for violation of my decree. It also removes you from the possible interference from the civilian council. Do not think this is merely charity, Naruto-kun. There have been others like you that were promoted from the academy. Naruto slowly rubbed the back of his head. What's the catch? The catch, Naruto-kun, is simple. Only a few others will be aware of your status as a shinobi. This will help your cover you will be assigned. And what cover is that? I cannot tell you unless you are willing to accept the promotion. Naruto closed his eyes and thought over the offer. It took mere moments before Naruto spoke. A shinobi's life is one of violence, deception, and death in service of their village. A shinobi must be willing to make whatever sacrifice is necessary to keep their people safe. Hiruzen nodded in approval. Tobirama-sensei made that same statement to myself when I was near your age. I'll do it, Gigi. Naruto sighed. Only if you think I'm ready. Oh, I think you are more than worthy. Chunin Uzumaki. Sarutobi grinned as Naruto went wide-eyed, jumping to his feet. Inu Nichin was right. You have gone senile. Sandaime ed an eyebrow, mental filing that away. He'd show Kakashi senile. I assure you, Naruto-kun. My mental health is just fine. Sarutobi told him with a deadpan expression. My reason for your rapid advancement is not favoritism. Need I remind you that you also have an off-the-books S-rank mission completed? Or the fact that you also cracked a seal that no one else could? But, that seems too much too fast. Naruto commented, dropping back into his seat. It may seem like it, but it's not out of the ordinary for those who are worthy of it. Sarutobi sighed, rising to his feet and facing the village. Do you know how old I was when I became the Sandaime Hokage? Naruto was caught off guard by the question. Well, I think you were a few years older than me. Hiruzen smiled as he looked back at Naruto. Actually, I was your age when I became the Hokage. Times were different during the First Shinobi War. Training started younger and for shorter period of time. Most of the more powerful shinobi in our village were either dead or couldn't be trusted to fulfill the dreams of the Shodai. A dream of a world of peace. Do you think I was ready for such responsibility thrust upon me at the age of 10? No one is truly ready. I think I understand Gigi. Yes, I think you do. Sarutobi acknowledged. Believe me, if I did not think you capable, I wouldn't consider this. However, I think it's time to explain your mission. Hi Hokage-sama, Naruto responded, drawing a smile from the old man. Your regular honorific is more than acceptable, Naruto-kun. So long as you know when to be formal. The Sandaime chuckled as he grabbed the folder from his desk and passed it to the young blonde. Your mission, Naruto-kun, is a long-term observation mission with no time frame as of yet. For you to be effective, your cover must be one of the idiot savant, unfortunately, to ensure you are teamed with the target. I have to flunk this year then. Naruto paused and realized just what he said. Never mind. So I have to make it appear I'm an idiot. More so than barely passing. Hi, that is correct. The target in question has been the top of his class for the last 2 years. Yeah, I've heard of him. Even before the massacre. Naruto muttered, looking over the report of his target. Potential flight risk. You want me to make sure he doesn't run? Preferably. Sarutobi commented before his gaze hardened. If that is not possible, termination. I have a dim view on traitors. Naruto gulped before nodding his understanding. Closing the folder, Naruto placed it back on the Hokage's desk. So, I need to flunk this year and be labeled dead last. Once I am assigned to that team, keep my eye on the target and do what I can to prevent him from running if it comes to it. That is correct. And do not worry. I have already spoken to Anko and the others of your promotion. As well as 3 other individuals who need to be aware. Hiruzen opened a drawer on his desk and pulled out a wrapped object, smiling as he passed it over to Naruto. While you cannot wear it due to your cover, you still have earned the right to this. Naruto unwrapped the cloth and saw the symbol of his village. Hiruzen smiled as Naruto ran his thumb over the metal plate. It might also interest you to know that Hitai 8 was the one your father wore. Otu-san's Hitai 8. Naruto didn't know what else to say as he rose to his feet and hugged the Hokage as his eyes teared up. Thank you, Gigi. Thank you. XXXXXXXXX. Congratulations. Naruto froze in shock as Anko, Kurenai, Iruka, Jiraiya and Kakashi all started clapping as he entered the apartment. Naruto beamed at them and nodded. Thank you. All of you. I hope I can make you all proud of me and to show your faith isn't misplaced. Never a doubt in my mind, Gaki. Jiraiya said as he clasped a hand on his shoulder. Trust me. You earned that. Indeed, Naruto. Jiraiya-sama and myself would not have vouched for you if we didn't feel you were ready. Kakashi assured him, and for once his little orange book wasn't out. Kakashi had long since told Naruto his true identity. Kurenai glared at the silver-haired Junin. And our own opinions of him didn't factor in. Jiraiya laughed as Kakashi raised his hands in defense. To be honest, Kurenai-san, the word of you three did carry weight, but not as much as a Sanin and an Anbu captain along with the director of T&I. He's got a point, Iruka commented, causing Kurenai to round on him in irritation. Just whose side are you on? While the two were talking, Anko pulled Naruto aside. She smiled proudly at him. Good job, Naruto-kun. I really do think you earned the promotion. Naruto smiled warmly and hugged the woman, trying his best to avoid noticing her attributes. Thanks, Anko-chan. It still feels surreal. I mean, going from academy student to Chunin. It sounds like something out of a bad story. Ah, Naruto-kun. He smiled, making his way to the chair besides the bed. You are awake. Good. How do you feel? Thirsty. And sore. What happened? You were brought here after you collapsed. According to Inu-kun, you successfully defeated 3 Chunin opponents. The old man explained. Apparently one of them had a poisoned blade. What? But that was 3 weeks ago. The Hokage could see the confusion on the young boy's face and smiled. You've been unconscious the past 3 days, Naruto-kun. The poison would have killed anyone else except my old student Tsunade. It took your unique healing factor that long to neutralize the poison. Oh, Naruto felt a flush of embarrassment. I guess that means you didn't promote me to Chunin then, huh? The Sandaime chuckled. No, I'm afraid not. While strength is one of the many aspects of a Chunin, you don't have the leadership experience nor the field experience yet. Naruto grinned sheepishly and looked back around the room, spotting Anko asleep next to him in the chair, using his orange jacket as a pillow. She has been here every day since you were brought in. Naruto looked back to the Sandaime. She was very shaken by everything that happened, but once I spoke with her, I cannot tell you how proud she was of you. Though she did say that for future events of similar circumstance, she wanted me to inform you to not let them die as quickly next time. She apparently is more fond of the long drawn-out forms. Naruto grinned at the Hokage's amused expression as he spoke. Secretly, Hiruzen agreed that the best form of death for a rapist should be a long-drawn affair. She is a fan of torture. Indeed. Now, I need to head back to the tower, but I do have something for you. Naruto perked up and waited as the Sandaime pulled a small wrapped object that caught Naruto's eyes. He locked eyes on the Sandaime. I thought you said you weren't promoting me to Chunin. Sandaime clarified. Upon the report of 2 Anbu along with Chunin Midarashi's report, I and the Shinobi Council feel you have displayed what it takes to be a shinobi. So with that in mind, I have decided that a promotion to Genin is the proper measure. Congratulations. Naruto accepted the Hitai-8 and smiled at the old man. Thank you. You earned it. Now, I'd like for you to report to my office tomorrow morning. I have a few things to discuss with you in regards to your sensei. Naruto watched the old man leave and stared at the Hitai-8 in his hands. You earned that. Looking to his right, he saw Anko stretching as she had woken and blushed before looking back to the metal plate he held in his hands. He cursed being around Jiraiya so much as he was acutely aware of the female body and caught himself at times staring. And it didn't help that puberty seemed to have come early to the blonde as he noticed how she arched her back when she stretched. He stamped down on his mind's thoughts as quickly as he could. But it wasn't fast enough. Anko spotted the blush and grinned a bit but didn't feel like teasing him about it. The memory was still fresh in her mind of the attack. And I heard you thought you were going to get shot right up to Chunin. Well, I am pretty awesome, so I'll leave you alone about that. He didn't know what to say and ducked his head, cheeks red. He sensed her move to his side and felt his head lifted up and over to make eye contact with her. He could see the seriousness in her eyes and the gratitude as she gave him a warm smile. Thank you for saving me again. Naruto's smile vanished a second later as she smacked him upside the head. That being said, don't ever do something like that again. Do you know how scared I was when you just fell over after pulling that damn seal off me? My heart felt like it had dropped through the floor. Naruto grimaced and bowed his head. Anko sighed and hugged the boy. Be more careful next time, alright? She looked down and saw him smiling at her. Just make sure I draw it out longer, right? Damn straight. XXXXXXXXXX. Ah, Naruto-kun. Just a moment please. Naruto watched as the Sandaime made a familiar seal and 3 more of him appeared. The clones nodded and began the task he had assigned them, which was paperwork. The Sandaime rose and motioned for Naruto to follow him. The pair left the tower and headed off towards the monument. I didn't realize you used shadow clones for paperwork, Hokage Gigi. If I didn't, I would be chained to that desk with no reprieve. Sandaime explained. While normally it is not so bad, end of the month reports make it heavier than normal. It's how I also get away from the office every once in a while. Now, come. They walked through the twisting paths for several minutes before the Sandaime stopped and blurred through seals before placing his hand upon a nearby tree. Naruto watched in amazement as what looked like a shimmering wall appeared before him. The Hokage beckoned him to follow and both walked through the wall. Looking around him, he was amazed at the beauty of the clearing as he followed the Sandaime to the edge of a pond. Sitting down, Hiruzen began puffing his pipe as Naruto sat across from him. Much better. Now we can talk. So, you are curious as to who your sensei will be, correct? Hi. Would you like to take a guess? Naruto thought for a moment. Inu Nichan. No, Naruto. Hiruzen chuckled. Your sensei is going to be Jiraiya-kun. He has claimed you as his apprentice, which is good fortune for you. Had you continued through the academy, there is a chance you would not have moved into the shinobi ranks. What? What do you mean? Tell me, Naruto. Do you know what it is that makes us the strongest village? It is not our numbers, but the quality of our shinobi. Before one takes their place, they must prove to their Junin sensei they have the ability and will to join. The old man paused and turned his gaze out over the clearing. Our village has always placed the quality of shinobi over anything else. We are also ones who prioritize never leaving a comrade. When the prospective genin are tested, they must show they can put their team over themselves. Teamwork is the greatest tool we have as shinobi besides secrecy. Our will of fire ensure that as long as we stand as one, we can accomplish more than anyone else. Naruto blinked before understanding what he said was correct. Sandaime turned his gaze back to Naruto. Only 3 teams on average actually make it past the true genin test. Too many times in the past the lessons are learned at the expense of a shinobi's life or their comrades. That is why we do our best to ensure only those who can truly embody our values continue on. I understand what you mean, Gigi. Our bonds make us stronger. He paused and looked at the Hokage with some fear. Do I need to pass a test before Ero Sennin can have me as his apprentice? The Sandaime chuckled. No. An apprentice can be selected by a Junin should the prospective student show the potential. You have shown that potential splendidly over the last few years. That does bring me to why I wished to speak with you today. While you will be Jiraiya-kun's apprentice, there will be times you will not be accompanying him on his trips out of the village. To ensure your training does not falter, you will be training with myself at these training grounds. For missions, you'll most likely team up with other genin teams if Jiraiya is not present. I get to train with you. That's awesome. Hiruzen watched in bemusement as the young boy jumped up excitedly. He had a feeling he would not be so excited once they began training. Sarutobi admitted the excitement he felt at once again teaching and training a genin of such promise, and by that same thought, he would not be pulling his punches. Naruto froze at the evil grin on the old man's face and felt a tingle of fear. What's with the grin? Just thinking on how much fun this is going to be. And trust me, Naruto. With my training, you only have two options. What are they? Sarutobi leveled a calm look at the blonde. Survive or die. XXXXXXXXXXX. Anko raised an eyebrow as Naruto limped through the door, looking much worse for wear. She could see the exhaustion in his face and the soreness he had to be feeling. Fun day of training. Gigi is a sadist. The deadpan tone caused Anko to giggle at the young man's response. She had heard stories of how the old man liked to train people into the dirt and then even harder. He was of the mind that the harder the training, the tougher the shinobi. Ah, it can't be that bad. You don't have any limbs missing. Naruto glowered at Anko before shuffling to the bathroom, desiring a nice hot shower. Shaking her head, Anko went back to finishing dinner for the two and plopped onto her couch. 30 minutes later, a refreshed-looking Naruto stepped out of the bathroom and made his way to the kitchen to grab his own food. So, how was it? Well, Gigi wanted to see where I stood in taijutsu, genjutsu, and ninjutsu. He explained between bites. He said my taijutsu was more than acceptable as with my ninjutsu. My genjutsu is trash though. Not surprised there. Your reserves are way too big to have the fine control needed for genjutsu. Exactly what he said. He also recommended I look into fuinjutsu in a kenjutsu form, but not to rush it. It's good advice. Anko commented, lazily flicking through the channels on the television. Most of us don't specialize until reaching Junin. Some of us find our preferred weapon of choice early. Like with my style, Senbon are a perfect fit. I can either knock you out or kill you painfully. All from a little Senbon. Naruto leveled his flat look at the woman as she smiled brightly after finishing her statement. She gave Naruto a wink and he shook his head. You know, sometimes I wonder about you. Ah, little Naru-chan thinks about little old me sometimes. She exaggerated, batting her eyelashes. Makes me feel all special inside. At least both of us think you special. Naruto teased. Anko punched his shoulder and settled back to watch the TV. I am serious though. You need to find a weapon that fits your style. I got time to figure that out though. Naruto commented. For now, I'll work on the skills I can and keep an eye open for any kenjutsu style that catches my eye. XXXXXXXXXX. Sarutobi grinned as he watched his student rise back to his feet. He wouldn't admit this outright, but he was impressed with Naruto's drive to push on. It reminded him of his early times training Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru. And from what he was seeing, Naruto was a lot like Jiraiya. After 2 months of training the young boy on and off when he had the time was wondrously refreshing. Right now though, the blonde was past his limits and the Sandaime needed a break himself after the 4-hour training session. Ah, breaking out the old survive or die training, sensei. Both looked to see the amused Jiraiya walking toward them. He glanced at Naruto before speaking. How is he doing? He shows potential. Hiruzen smirked. He also learned how to dodge my bow staff quicker than you when you were just starting out. Jiraiya scowled, but the amusement in his eyes showed he wasn't upset. Naruto gave the man a hug as Sandaime thumped his lower back with his fist, groaning as he felt his back pop. Getting up in the years there, sensei. I can still clean your clock. Sandaime remarked. I admit I wondered when you were returning. Well, seeing as I need to take a trip to Suna, I figure I can train my apprentice and expose him to the rest of the world. Really? I can come with you? Naruto asked excitedly. Jiraiya grinned and nodded. Yup. Figure a 2-month training trip starting in Suna would be good. So go pack and I'd recommend you be prepared for the desert heat. Naruto gave a happy cry, exhaustion forgotten as he took off in an orange streak towards his home. Sarutobi looked at Jiraiya in curiosity. Suna. The man frowned and nodded.